Hello humans, welcome back. We have done our retopology. Obviously this is a little bit too dense as it is right now. We still have 1500 verts. It's not that much to be honest, but it's nicer if we could maybe drop this down a little bit more. But we can't go on ahead and do that just yet because we don't really know. Um, we're not really sure what kind of geometry we're going to need, what kind of topology we're going to need to get the best possible deformation. So I'm going to leave this as it is right now. Obviously, it could use some work, especially over here in the end. But I did opt for not capping this with a pole and simply having them connect at the bottom here. This allows me to have very nice edge loops. So if I go ahead and select this, my edge loop is going to run across this whole model. If I select this, obviously I'm going to have an edge loop here, but I can have edge loops. This wouldn't work otherwise, okay? If I had a regular cap, right? If I just collapse this inwards, my edge loop would end at this vertex over here because it would be a pole with thousands and thousands of edges running into it. And I would not be able to grab this whole edge here. And, if I decided to maybe do something, well, if I could maybe grab it and I decided to do stuff, I would not be able to do so. Now, obviously, I probably don't need to, not to mention that, I could maybe just go ahead and go with the, what's its face, just constrain about like along the edge or run across the surface. But at the end of the day, this allows me a lot more flexibility, and it's a good practice anyway to have edge loops running across your whole geometry where you can select the whole thing and just work on it. Okay, so even though you don't have to, try to always finish your, try to avoid poles in general. Okay, obviously use them if it is possible, but when you're retopologizing, you'll be better off just capping it off like this. I know it doesn't look as pretty, but it is a little bit more functional than it has to be. Okay, let's see how our skeleton fits with this whole setup here. Let's pop it out, including our controllers. And currently, we don't really know how this is going to work. Now we're gonna bind this just as an example, but we're not gonna skin this just yet because I want to go through animation in order to set up a couple of bind poses, a couple of poses to show. Basically it's going to be easier to work with, and I'm going to show you why right now. So let's select our skin and then select our bones, joints or whatever, and just pop off the skin menu, and let's bind the skin. Let me just open up here the settings. And we're going to use the same one I showed you. Well, the only difference is that we should perhaps have the max influences at 2, at least in my situation, because I don't want any vertices. Let's say I want this vertex to have influence only from this bone and from this bone. I don't want it to have influence from this bone or from this bone or from this bone. So that's why your max influence is important when you're binding your skin. Make sure that you know, just understand how your object is going to move in space so that you know how much influences each and every vertex needs to have. Um, Obviously, the whole colorize skeleton and include all that jazz. So it's nice to have this on. You don't have to, but it's nice. The fall off of 0.2 is fine, and I always max out the resolution for the best possible bind anyway. I'm going to click bind, and it's going to take a little bit to voxelize the mesh. But what's important to understand here is that once this is bound, we're going to have to start painting the skin weights because it's never going to be perfect. And almost every situation, the initial bind is pretty bad. Now, in the later versions or maybe in the higher level versions, there are Delta Mush deformers, not in the LT, but in the regular mine, the Delta Mush is extremely good. I don't know what they've done, how they've done it, but the Delta Mush is one of the best deformers you can have, especially for a humanoid, and the results are mind-blowing with pretty much minimal work included. Things that would take you 2 or 3 hours to iron out, you could do that within a couple of minutes with the Delta Mush, especially with the 2018, where you can now bake it in your vertices because deformers don't get exported in an FBX file, but if you bake it in, basically it's going to transfer all the results into the vertex weights. But look, whatever, we'll talk about this later because this is a little bit going a little bit further into our material. But what I wanted to show you now is, let's just see. Look, it's bound, right? So you can see here on the right side, you've got you've got your inputs and the outputs. This is your bind pose. The skin cluster is there, full envelope, no issues. We can modify this to use or deform the normals or not, which usually you want. The inputs obviously is our skeleton, because that's the thing that's going to drive our mesh. So that's totally fine. Now let's see what we've got here. Let's see what we've made. I'm going to lift this up a little bit, and this is fine. Actually, I believe we could define a bind pose. I think it was possible. I just forgot the way to do it now. Yeah, I think it was possible to define a pose. I'm just not too sure what was the way to do it. It doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. We can just zero everything out anyway from the controls over here. So let's lift this up and see what we've done. Seems to work just fine right now. Let's, moment of truth, grab our first setup here and let's move it down. Well, honestly, it looks pretty good. Oh, there we go. We start getting some issues because the skin weights are not completely attached to our bones. Now, I'm going to leave this in the middle here. Maybe just pull it down a little bit and grab this second bit as well. Move it down like so. Squash it out, stretch it out, so to speak. Now, it's not bad, really. It's a pretty good bind, but it definitely could have been better. Like so, let's say. Definitely could have been better. Number 4. Just obviously we're working on our control vertices. In reality, I could just I could unparent this. I could unparent these and grab the edit points on the curve, because right now it's the CVs that we're working on, and our geometry is going through the proverbial floor. So this is an issue after all. And not to be fair, we do need to create a root joint, like I've already showed you before, not only for root motion, but for the actual just so that we can zero it out, right? Because the 0 point should be at the 0, 0, 0. So the engine has no problems with it. But for now, let's just focus on our skin weights. And what you can see clearly here is that we're lacking some weights. I mean, there's too much influence from here, not enough influence from here, and this is what's happening. Maybe there's not enough geometry, maybe there's not enough loops for our deformation. So we should really take a look at what's the story here. Now, just like all the other what's its face? Just like all the other things in Maya, you can mirror the skin weights. So ideally, you want to be working on on one side of the object, because you can mirror it across as long as it's obviously symmetrical. So let's go ahead and hammer a few weights here, shall we? I'm going to grab this whole section here. No, not this whole section, but this whole section over here. Maybe I should just go from the side so that it's a little bit more. There we go. And let's hammer the skin weight, see what happens. Now remember, hammering gives vertices the same value as their neighbor. So if I hammer this, what is this? Unable to perform on select topology has changed within the skin. No, it hasn't. What the hell is wrong with you? All right, because we moved the object. Okay. All right, well, let's just go ahead and delete all by type and just the history, not the non-deformant. Oh, crap. No. I deleted the wrong bit. Oh, no. The non-deformant history. I didn't screw it up, did I? Oh, crap. Please please tell me I didn't screw it up. Yeah, okay, we're still in it. Control Z thankfully worked. This was scary. Almost lost my deformers, which were my control clusters, which were my the things that I animate the damn thing with. Okay, let's go back into vertex mode. Select this bit here, and let's see if hammer skin weights should work. Yes, it works now. So yeah, whenever something breaks, just delete the damn history and hope that it fixes it. And if it doesn't, then you're kind of screwed. But hammer the skin weights, and really there's not much of an improvement here. Well, a little bit, you could say. A little bit of improvement I can't select this bit. It's going to be annoying to select all these like so. There we go. Hammer them. I don't think we should hammer this bit. So yeah, well, obviously we can play around with this, and at some point we will arrive to an acceptable result, right? But at the end of the day, you want to be sure that your binding is correct. So we need to go into our paint skin weights tool here, and after that we're gonna have to be painting our skins and see what the story is. Open up the tool settings, and obviously we can go ahead and start painting here, and obviously on just on one side because we're going to mirror the rest of it on the other side. And all the rules apply where, you know, I told you how to basically you know, paint the skin weights. But we're not going to do this just yet because we want to have several different states of animation, and really we want to paint the skin weights in such a way that will work for our animating purposes. So in most situations, you'd be wanting to just have a couple of poses set up so that you can see what the most extreme situations are and how your model will deform on these extremes, so that you can paint your skin weights accordingly. Otherwise, obviously, you could just go ahead and zero everything out and start painting just blindly. But this is not going to help your case a lot, okay? So if let's say I select the L joint 2, this is the left joint, right? Is it? Yeah. You want to be giving it a little bit more. Sorry, I'm painting on the freaking skin weights here. So you want to paint on the whole object. So this will give you a little bit more deformation. There we go. We got a little bit better. And obviously, you basically be playing with this. And in this situation, we don't really have enough. We really don't have enough, you know, skin weights here. But we need to smooth them out. So you're going to have to start smoothing here, relaxing them a little bit. Depending on the situation here, so that it's a little bit more purple. For some reason, this is going totally in the opposite way, so we need to go ahead and grab the vertex and re-enable our skin painting tool, and, you know, flood this vertex with, I don't know, 0, 0, and flood it. Maybe max it out then. That's very strange. Maybe we should give it some more influence in the central here. By 0.5, flood, yeah, something like this. Look, basically play around with this, but we're gonna do this after we're done with the animating bit, because at the end of the day, you wanna focus your skin painting on the actual animations you're gonna perform. So you wanna have these poses here. Plus, this is not ideal. Off the video, I will most likely reparent these not to the control vertices, but to the actual edit points on the curve, such as, let's say, here on number 4. If I could perhaps select them. Can I select them? Yeah. So, you know, they're basically operating on these CVs, so I probably go ahead and grab the 4th one and maybe unparent it because I want to work on the edit point here. If I can select the edit point. No. Where's the edit point? This is the curve. Give me the edit point. There we go. Edit point. So I probably select this whole edit point here and parent this to number 4, so that it's easier. Because right now, if we go, actually for some weird reason, I don't know. Maybe I can't remember how to go to, you know, define a bind pose, but we cannot grab a bind pose here. For some reason, it doesn't want to go. So. That's why you just usually zero these things out. Let's try this one more time before we... Yeah, for some reason this just doesn't want to go to bind pose. So what I'm going to do is zero everything out. And I'm going to set this to 1. So we're back at where we started. Okay, now I'm going to unbind this, and I suggest you do this as well, just to have it, you know, as a fresh start. So... Actually, no, let's keep it. Let's keep it. But if you are going to unbind this, let me just show you something, mention something important here too. When you go to unbind skin, make sure you keep the history on. Don't delete it. Or worst case scenario, bake the history. But don't delete it if you plan on rebinding this, you know, and saving your skin painting if you've done some noticeable progress, okay? So yeah, there's that. In the next video, we will not be using this scene, or actually maybe we will use this scene. I'm just gonna hide everything from your view, like so, and we will work. What's the story? Oh, because this is bound, I cannot hide it. Really? Why not? Oh, okay, this is not added to the, I forgot that we've got only the high poly here, so I need to add the selected object, and now we shall hide it. Okay. In the next video, we'll be talking about animation, what's the whole idea behind it, how it works, and after that, we will set a couple of poses for our object so that we can paint the skin weights to it, and after that, we'll obviously animate it, and finally export it to Unreal Engine so that we can start our game development process. Believe it or not, this is usually how it goes, right? You get a lot, you need some assets, some basic assets if you're going to start prototyping your game, and unfortunately it does take quite a long time to get them done. Now obviously not as long as these these tutorials have been, for obvious reasons. When you're working, you don't have to explain to yourself every single time when you do something, but in any situation you will always run into some roadblocks or some minor bumps, not pits but just regular bumps, where you're going to have to Google stuff, or dodge a bug, or try to figure out a particular workflow and maybe modify your own setup so that it's a little bit faster to work with. So whenever you are animating, like I said, make sure that you have a good idea of what you want to do. Okay, this is it for this video, guys. In the next video, I'm going to save. In the next video, we will talk about how animation works. What's the whole idea? You'll see how easy it is, and we'll basically go through some of the simplest ways you can animate. Obviously, there's a lot of depth to it, but I think animation is not nearly as complicated as the rest of Maya. I think it's actually one of the easiest things to do, in my opinion, out of Maya, for the simple reason that it just has to do with motion. Okay. Like control rigs, even skin painting, skin weight painting is a lot easier, I believe. Is a lot harder than animating, because your animation is the result of the quality of your animation is the result of everything you've done to that point. Okay, it's the result of your model, first of all. Second of all, of your topology. Third of all, of your vertex and poly count. Obviously, this is part of the topology, but topology is important because where you're going to deform, then it's important that your rigging is correct, so you can perform the correct movements and just animate this damn thing. They need to have a proper control rig that gives you the maximum amount of controls, so that you can animate correctly. So the animation is really the last step in this process, and it all depends. The quality of the animation depends on every single aspect prior to that. So make sure that before you begin animating, that it's not to say that you can't just go back after you're not happy with an animation and just add a couple of loops here and there. But changing the mesh drastically is not easy, because you need to repaint the skins and probably create a couple of more bones and then basically add to your control rig. So you can see that you got to go into this a little bit more focused so that you know what you're doing. Okay, I'll see you in the next video. That's it for now. Bye bye.